Imagine this. In the dead of night, just 38 nautical miles off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, Iranian forces storm aboard a vessel quietly anchored in international waters. No shots fired, no dramatic explosions on the horizon, but the target isn't just any ship. It's a floating armory, a mobile weapons depot stocked with guns, ammunition, and equipment designed to protect commercial vessels from pirates and hostile threats in one of the world's most dangerous shipping lanes. And here's the twist that has governments from Washington to Beijing on high alert. This ship, the Huichuan, is Chinese-owned and operated. It flies a Honduras flag. The seizure happened right as Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping were holding critical talks in Beijing. What happens when Iran grabs a Chinese-linked vessel in a strategic zone where the U.S. Navy is actively patrolling and enforcing a blockade? Does this single bold move risk igniting a wider confrontation? Or is it a calculated provocation in a shadow war that has been simmering across the Strait of Hormuz for months? Today we're diving deep into exactly what happened on May 14th and 15th, 2026. We'll examine why a seemingly obscure floating armory matters far more than most people realize, how the U.S. military has responded, the dangerous geopolitical chess game unfolding, and what this incident could mean for global oil prices, international shipping, and the fragile balance of power in the Middle East. This story is still developing rapidly, and the stakes could not be higher. Stick with me until the end. Let's begin with the facts as they unfolded. On Thursday, May 15, 2026, the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, or UKMATO, issued an urgent warning to mariners. A vessel had been boarded by unauthorized personnel approximately 38 nautical miles northeast of Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates. The location placed the incident in the Gulf of Oman, near the eastern entrance to the critical Strait of Hormuz. Shortly after the boarding, the ship was redirected toward Iranian territorial waters, and its automatic identification system tracking suddenly went dark. Maritime security analysts and firms monitoring the region quickly identified the vessel as the Huichuan. This Honduras-flagged ship, originally built in 1984 as a fishery research and support vessel, is operated by Hong Kong-based Sinagards. The company confirmed that Iranian forces, widely believed to be units from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, had taken control of the vessel and moved it into Iranian waters. Importantly, no injuries were reported among the crew. Sinagards described the vessel as an offshore work platform and stated it was undergoing some form of documentation or compliance inspection. However, independent maritime security consultants painted a clearer picture. The Huichuan was functioning as one of the region's floating armories, also known as vessel-based armories or VBAS. These specialized ships serve as offshore warehouses for private maritime security companies. They store firearms, ammunition, and tactical equipment in international waters. Private security teams board these armories to collect weapons before protecting commercial tankers and cargo ships through high-risk areas such as the Gulf of Aden, the Red Sea, or waters plagued by piracy and militia attacks. Once the transit is complete, guards return the weapons to the floating armory and disembark, avoiding the complex legal issues of bringing arms into various national ports. Floating armories emerged as a practical solution after the surge in Somali piracy during the late 2000s and early 2010s. International maritime law and port regulations in many countries strictly limit the transport of weapons. Shipping companies needed a way to hire armed guards without constantly violating territorial rules. These offshore platforms provided the perfect workaround. They act as floating bases where guards can embark and disembark safely. In recent years, as threats in the Middle East have intensified due to Houthi attacks, Iranian interference, and general instability, the demand for such services has only grown. The Huichuan was precisely such a platform, quietly supporting the security of global trade routes that carry trillions of dollars in goods every year. The choice of target is significant. Iran has a documented history of intercepting and seizing vessels it claims violate its interests or international maritime norms. Previous incidents have involved tankers, cargo ships, and even naval confrontations. But targeting a Chinese-linked floating armory adds multiple layers of complexity. China is one of Iran's most important economic partners, purchasing large volumes of Iranian oil despite international sanctions. Beijing maintains diplomatic ties with Tehran while simultaneously pursuing its own massive trade interests across the Indian Ocean and beyond. Seizing a vessel connected to Chinese operators could be interpreted as a deliberate message or potentially a serious miscalculation that risks drawing China into the escalating tensions. This incident did not occur in isolation. For several weeks leading up to the seizure, the United States has been enforcing a naval blockade of Iranian ports as part of a broader pressure campaign. Since mid-April 2026, U.S. Central Command forces have actively intercepted vessels attempting to enter or exit Iranian harbors. The goal has been to restrict Iran's oil export revenue while still maintaining freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz for international shipping. This delicate balancing act reflects the extreme strategic importance of the strait itself. The Strait of Hormuz is often called the jugular vein of global energy. Between 20 and 30% of the world's seaborne crude oil passes through this narrow waterway daily. Tankers carrying oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the way, and Iran itself rely on this choke point. Any sustained disruption here would send oil prices skyrocketing, trigger inflation worldwide, and create immediate economic pain for importing nations including China, India, Japan, and Europe. Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the strait or lay mines in response to military or economic pressure. The United States has responded with a strong show of naval force, including destroyers, aircraft carrier strike groups, patrol boats, and extensive surveillance assets. American commanders have made clear that freedom of navigation will be defended forcefully if necessary. The timing of the Huichuan seizure adds another dramatic element. The boarding took place almost simultaneously with high-level diplomatic meetings between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Reports from those talks indicate that both leaders discussed the need to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for energy flows and expressed concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions. Trump reportedly emphasized the importance of preventing advanced arms from reaching Iran. Yet, while these conversations were happening, Iranian forces were towing a Chinese-connected vessel into their waters. This contrast highlights the unpredictable nature of the current geopolitical environment. Iran's strategy appears to blend hybrid warfare tactics with calculated risk-taking. By targeting private security infrastructure like floating armories, Tehran creates friction for commercial shipping without necessarily triggering an immediate full-scale military response. These gray zone actions allow Iran to assert influence over what it considers its sphere of maritime control while testing the resolve of the United States and its partners. At the same time, such moves carry the danger of miscalculation. Private maritime security exists to protect trade, not to threaten Iranian interests directly. Disrupting it could raise insurance premiums, slow down shipping, and ultimately hurt global markets, including those Iran depends upon indirectly. Now let's examine the U.S. military response. Publicly available information shows no immediate kinetic action specifically targeting the Huichuan after its seizure, no dramatic boarding operation by Navy SEALs, no missile strikes, and no direct interdiction of the vessel itself. However, this does not mean the United States remained passive. The broader American military posture in the region remains extremely robust. CENTCOM maintains a powerful presence with multiple warships, air assets, and intelligence capabilities constantly monitoring the area. In recent months, U.S. and coalition forces have engaged Iranian small boats, neutralized incoming drones and missiles, conducted boardings of suspicious vessels, and provided escorts for commercial shipping when requested. American naval commanders have stressed both the degradation of certain Iranian naval capabilities and the unwavering readiness of U.S. forces to respond to threats. The message from Washington has been consistent. Provocations will be met with strength, but escalation will be managed carefully to avoid unnecessary wider conflict. The measured approach to this particular incident likely reflects several strategic considerations. First, the ship is linked to China, a major global power whose involvement could complicate any direct confrontation. Second, the seizure occurred during sensitive diplomatic engagements. Third, a floating armory is a private commercial asset rather than a state military vessel, changing the legal and political calculations. Instead of immediate force, the U.S. appears to be relying on sustained presence, deterrence patrols, intelligence sharing with allies, and diplomatic pressure behind the scenes. This calibrated response aims to protect vital interests without handing Iran an easy propaganda victory or triggering a spiral of retaliation. The implications of this event extend far beyond a single ship. For the commercial shipping industry, the incident adds another layer of uncertainty in an already high-risk environment. Insurance companies have already raised premiums for vessels transiting the region due to previous attacks and disruptions. Further incidents could drive costs even higher, forcing shipping companies to reroute vessels, demand stronger naval escorts, or pass increased expenses on to consumers. Global supply chains remain vulnerable, and energy prices react quickly to any news of instability in the Gulf. For China, the seizure creates a genuine dilemma. Beijing wants stable energy supplies and safe passage for its own merchant fleet. It has invested heavily in the Belt and Road Initiative and depends on secure maritime routes. Publicly criticizing Iran while privately urging restraint is a likely path forward. The incident also serves as a reminder of the risks Chinese maritime security firms face when operating in contested waters far from home. China's growing blue water naval capabilities may eventually provide more direct protection, but for now, reliance on private contractors and diplomatic maneuvering remains necessary. For Iran, these types of seizures represent low-cost, high-visibility ways to project power and harass adversaries. However, they also risk alienating important partners like China and inviting stronger countermeasures from the United States and its Gulf allies. Each incident adds to the cumulative pressure on Tehran's economy and international standing. Whether these actions strengthen Iran's negotiating position or ultimately weaken it remains one of the central questions of the current crisis. Looking ahead, several developments appear likely. We can expect continued U.S. and allied naval patrols in the region. Diplomatic efforts between Washington, Beijing, and regional capitals will intensify as all sides seek to prevent a complete breakdown of maritime security. Shipping companies will update their risk assessments and possibly increase the use of armed guards or convoy systems. Oil markets will remain volatile, with traders watching every new report from the Strait of Hormuz closely. The seizure of the Huichuan is more than just another maritime incident. It represents a flashpoint in the ongoing struggle for control over critical global trade routes. In an era where energy security underpins economic stability, military power, and everyday life for billions of people, events like this remind us how interconnected our world truly is and how quickly localized actions can create global consequences. The situation remains fluid. New details could emerge at any moment regarding the crew's status, negotiations for the ship's release, or further military movements. What began as the boarding of a single vessel could either fade into the background of ongoing tensions or become the spark that changes the regional dynamic permanently. What are your thoughts on this developing story? Is Iran playing a dangerous game of provocation, or does it have legitimate security concerns driving its actions? Will the United States and China find common ground to stabilize the strait, or are we heading toward more direct confrontations? The answers to these questions will shape not only the future of the Middle East but also the global economy for years to come. This is a story we will continue to follow closely. The balance of power in one of the world's most vital waterways hangs in delicate tension, and every move by Iran, the United States, or China carries enormous weight. Freedom of navigation, energy security, and international stability are all on the line. Stay informed, because what happens next in the waters off Fujairah and within the Strait of Hormuz will matter to every person on the planet.